We are days away from the August 2nd trade deadline. And if the collective thought was that the Braves were only going to make some minimal moves, well, things have most certainly changed. Adam Duvall is lost for the season. Ian Anderson has struggled, and they've gotten some of the league's worst production out at second base since Ozzie Albies went down with an injury. This is Battery Power TV, Cory McCartney, along with Grant McAuley. And as we look to put our focus on just how the Braves could fill those needs ahead of the deadline.
Yeah, and it's a lot of needs as you just laid out. You'd like to think that maybe it was just, hey, add a bullpen arm, or hey, maybe just see if something strikes your fancy and not have to do the kind of wrangling and maneuvering that Alex Anthopoulos did last year. I don't know that it'll get to that level in terms of having to replace that many players, but the Braves do have some definite needs here, Cory, and we're going to talk about each and every one of them.
So let's get right into it. I think from a priority standpoint, the biggest area for need is now a corner outfield spot after losing Duvall to that season-ending wrist injury. Grant, give me a couple of names here that you think could end up helping the Braves out in that spot.
Yeah, I'm interested to see exactly how far this goes, because while the Braves could use some help after losing Adam Duvall, particularly right-handed help as far as the outfield is concerned, I don't think it's that they're necessarily working at a complete deficit in the outfield. The biggest thing is you're going to need Ronald Acuna Jr. to produce more. You've got Michael Harris, who's looking great, and Eddie Rosario seems to be putting some stuff together. So I was looking for a right-handed complement that could be in the outfield and maybe defensively give you the kind of thing that Adam Duvall does. So I was looking out to Oakland again. As we know, the Alex Anthopoulos has already gone shopping there for a fairly notable addition, but maybe Ramon Laureano. Laser Ramon would be the guy to add to the Braves outfield mix, and he would be a nice complement, can play obviously a premier defensive level. He's got a great throwing arm, can play all three spots. And I think that's the kind of name I would be looking for. And I'm really hard pressed to find a lot of other outfielders. We could have talked about Andrew Benintendi, but he's already off the board.
Yeah, obviously Benintendi would have been the easy pick. He's a New York Yankee now. I'm honestly starting with Ian Happ here. I think he, primarily he's played in left field for the Cubs, but he can man all three positions. He's also played 380 innings at second base. So if you feel like maybe you're not going to get Ozzie Albies back until maybe the later end of the expectations there of late August or even early September, and you want to mix him in there at second base, you can obviously do that. He's a switch hitter. He's been above league average on both sides of the plate. Weighted run creative plus of 117 as a lefty, 159 as a righty, a 920 OPS against southpaws. But obviously one of the biggest things with Ian Happ is that he has another year of club control. But another guy I'll throw at you out here who doesn't have that, basically Ian Happ light, is Brandon Drury. Ultra cheap, making just $900,000 this year. I think we're a little bit of agreement there. The numbers are honestly a little bit taller than Happ's have been to this point, but you got to put into effect that he's hit 44% above league average at home compared to 15% below elsewhere. So I think that might be a little bit of an issue, but I think we're in agreement that Drury could be a name they could look to as well.
Yeah, I think he could be. I don't know if he'd necessarily be a guy that you're looking for in the outfield need that the Braves may have. I think it's more so somebody who could play second base and help you out, because as you mentioned, whether it's Orlando Arcia or whether it's Robinson Cano now, the Braves are really not getting much out of second base since Ozzie Albies went down. And even Ozzie this year was still kind of searching, trying to get himself going. So the Braves second base production that they saw in 2021 has been notably down from that. But Drury does have 41 extra base hits. He's had 19 home runs this year. And he's OPSing pretty well, about 850 or so, 840 thereabouts. And I think that those are numbers that you can live with. And maybe Great American Ballpark helps out a little bit. But I do like him to add to the infield versatility and the depth. And it would be kind of fitting for the Braves to go out and get a former farmhand and maybe bring him home and do something special in October, a decade or so after trading him away to the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, Drury does have versatility, and I will add to that he has 11 of his home runs have come in Cincinnati. 26 of his 41 extra base hits have also come at Great American Ballpark, but maybe you can end up packaging him. Obviously, we know there's potentially a rotation need for the Braves there. Ian Anderson's inconsistencies continue. If you thought maybe Kyle Muller was going to be an option there after pitching well in AAA, obviously there's a little bit of an issue there with him. He took a comebacker in his non-pitching hand, and he's going to be out of Gwinnett's plans for at least the next 5 days, which is obviously going to push him past that August 2nd deadline. So what about rotation options there? I mean, certainly there are names in Cincinnati, but give us a couple that you think could be options in terms of the starting pitching market.
Yeah, clearly we know that Luis Castillo and Tyler Mahle are guys that are going to be, or they're already heavily scouted at minor league systems that have the kind of prospects that you usually have to give up for that kind of top of the rotation arm, particularly in Castillo's case. I don't know if that's necessarily the direction that Alex Anthopoulos is going to go, though either of those guys I think would be nice additions, particularly Castillo. But I was looking over at Detroit, and was just kind of reading, you see all the different reports, all the different rumors that the Tigers are pretty much open to dealing a lot of players. And it might be actually surprising. Now, some of the cornerstone pieces and top prospects and top draft picks that they were bringing up through their system, obviously those guys are hands off, but Derek Skubal is a very interesting name, at least to me. He's a guy that's made 20 starts this season. And if you go to look a little bit deeper into the numbers, about a strikeout per inning, he has cut down his walks. And this is the kind of stabilizing piece with some upside that you'd have under team control that feels like a deal that maybe Alex Anthopoulos or really any contending club would like to have in order to just add him to that cache of pitchers that you have and see if you're able to maybe hit on somebody that's kind of coming into his own. And for the Tigers, as they continue their rebuild, which they're very much still in, if they have an opportunity to turn a guy like this into a couple or three other assets for them, I think that's why they would be entertaining that. And that's why Skubal really checks a bunch of boxes on my list, if in fact he is available, which will be interesting at 25 years old. Those are not usually the kind of arms you see traded at the deadline.
I'll go with a name that's maybe not the sexiest on the market, but Jose Quintana. I think 33 years old. The lefties bounce back in a big way. ERA plus of 113's best since his All-Star season of 2016, allowing the fewest home runs he's allowed in 8 years. So I think he could be a really interesting bet. Obviously, the Pirates could use all kinds of help. Maybe they end up going to Quintana, but I think from a dark horse standpoint, the Padres are that rare contender that could end up being both buyers and sellers of this market. They're in that real close area, the competitive balance tax of going over it for a second straight year, which of course means a 30% rate that you're going to have to pay on every dollar that you are over that balance. If they're going to go out and make a play for Juan Soto, and there are rumors that they're going to do exactly that, I think they're going to have to clear space in order to make it happen. They have a log jam of starting pitchers. Do they move Blake Snell? Do they move Mike Clevenger? Snell is making $12.5 million this year, another year of control at $16 million. If the Padres are going to shop a starter, and he may make the most sense in terms of getting out of town to clear that space, the Braves could stand to benefit without question if they can get the Padres to move Blake Snell.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting move. I'm just curious as to how aggressive the Padres can afford to be with that depth once they got tested with Mackenzie Gore going down. Now, how long he'll be out and what that does to their current plans and their future plans. So I think they're good questions to ask, but can they afford to do that kind of thing? I think that's why I really keyed in on a guy like Skubal, who the Detroit Tigers are really not going to be going anywhere this year in terms of the postseason. So that they have some assets that are going to be interesting. I'm also going to get into their bullpen in a minute, which is another place that's got a few interesting arms that could be worth looking at. But, I just feel like if you are able to find a club that's out of it, you're probably going to have an easier job of prying away a useful starting pitcher. I'm still kind of sheepish about really embracing the Padres as sellers, even if it does make some sense. And even if there is some economics involved, it just seems like they might end up moving around too many pieces and perhaps getting maybe over aggressive, out over their skis a bit in the trade deadline, even if they're able to get Juan Soto, which as of right now, those reports are that could be a good landing spot for him.
Well, AJ Preller, if he's one thing, he is aggressive.
That's true.
We know the Braves bullpen has been the league's best in terms of Fangraph WAR, but there are blemishes. You mentioned Detroit in terms of where you might look to for bullpen help. Give us a name or two out of there.
Yeah, I was looking at Joe Jimenez, and I think that he's an interesting name. He's a former All-Star. He's a guy that about a year ago, I think there was some question as to whether or not the Tigers were going to tender him a contract, but he's really turned things around here in 2022. I like what I've been seeing, just looking at the overall numbers. He's got his strikeouts up. He's been able to, if you go in and beyond into the analytics of it and look at where he is in terms of all of his fastball rates, the barrel rates, the hard hit, the expected slugging, all of those things, looking pretty positive here for Joe Jimenez this year. An ERA just over 3, a FIP that's a full run lower than that, and he's punching out nearly 12 and a half batters per 9 while walking fewer than 2 batters per 9. That's the kind of right-handed arm I'd like to throw out into that bullpen that already has some strikeout guys like AJ Minter and Kenley Jansen and Tyler Matzik and perhaps Dylan Lee, who's really carving out a great role as well. I think a right-handed arm would be really what you need to add into that group.
I wouldn't mind them going out and getting another lefty because Will Smith has really struggled. He's allowed a 12.6 ERA over his last 6 outings, 2 home runs. So I'm focusing on left-handed options, and I'm going to stick with Detroit because I like Andrew Chafin. 2.64 ERA through 30 and 2/3 innings, striking out 10.9 per 9. Just allowed 1 home run in 36 appearances. That K rate, a nearly 5% increase from last year. He's seen an 8% increase in whiffs as well. That arsenal, a 102 expected batting average against that slider. So I think he could be interesting. Another really under the radar name I'll throw at you though is Matt Moore. Obviously, you remember him as a starter with the Rangers, an all-star with the Rays. He's been to the bullpen now. He's at 1.61 ERA in 33 games. 10.07 K per nine, his best in any full season. He pitched multiple innings. He's done it 18 times, has a 170 average against righties. I will say, though, he has the highest walk rate of his career, so it's not all perfect, but I think he's that kind of low-end option. If you're looking to somebody that maybe you catch lightning in a bottle, Matt Moore could end up helping out the Braves in a big way as well.
Yeah, and this was formerly the number one pitching prospect in baseball back in, I believe, 2011. And when he made his debut with the Rays, some arm injuries have derailed his career, going from what looked like a high-end starter to a guy that's just trying to carve out that career and find a role that works for him. It would be interesting if, in fact, and I mean, this is something that's probably not of note to too many other people, but it's of note to me. You get Kirby Yates back. That's a former Rays prospect I knew pretty well. Matt Moore would be another one. So for me, it would be a lot of fun to catch up with those guys. But the bottom line is, can they help the Braves bullpen? I think the answer for Yates is yes. He's a former all-star. And I think with Moore, there's some tread on the tire there. I mean, the walks might be a little bit troublesome, but when you don't allow very many hits, I do think that that is something that you can work with. And I'm just interested to see if the Braves really go all in on another lefty because of the emergence of Dylan Lee. The struggles of Will Smith are what they are, but having Lee and Matzik and Minter, along with Kenley Jansen, get Kirby Yates back, I just feel like they're missing that one righty. I know that Colin McHugh is also giving the Braves some pretty good innings, and he can strike out a lot of batters as well. It'll be interesting to see how much depth Alex Anthopoulos can build at the trade deadline, and if he does add multiple bullpen arms, if he can't find somebody to help the rotation.
The Braves will play their final home games before the deadline against a team that has some pieces they could look to as well with the Diamondbacks. We talked about Ian Anderson and getting the start Saturday. This outing against a team that's 24th in weighted run created plus feels like a key one for the right-hander, Grant, if he wants to stay in the mix.
It really does. And we felt like maybe it's been for a while now that Ian Anderson's been going kind of start to start, and he would take a step forward. Then it felt like he'd take a step back again. And there have been a couple of really rough ones over the past month that really have you wondering, what's going on with Ian Anderson, and does he have enough time to figure it out? And also, can the Braves afford to allow him to figure it out at the big league level every fifth day if it could cost them games down the stretch? Those are the kind of things that the Braves are going to have to ask themselves. I know that's why Alex Anthopoulos will be making those phone calls and looking for depth. It has nothing to do with not liking Ian Anderson and then maybe the prognosis for his long-term value to the Braves. But in the present tense, there have been a lot of struggles for Ian. So if you're pitching for your spot, if that's the way that it comes down, I feel like that's probably an accurate way to describe what Ian Anderson is going to be doing when it comes out to the start against Arizona. And it's the last thing you want to be thinking about while you're out there, but it's the reality, I think, Corey, of where we are.
Yeah, he's got a 6.25 ERA in his last 12 starts, a 3.03 average against. If there's a positive for him, though, the D-backs have little experience against him. There hasn't been much success for the hitters who have seen him. The whole team has a combined 18 plate appearances against Anderson and has just one hit. So he gets the middle game in the series. Kyle Wright starting things off, Max Fried on Sunday. So this is the kind of series that the Braves know that they need to win to be able to make up that ground in the National League East. If you're not already, make sure you're following along with us all season long here on Battery Power TV. Subscribe, turn on notifications so you get those alerts going for each and every new episode. And also, of course, you can find us Sunday nights on 92.9 The Game in Atlanta from the Diamond. Check out the podcast wherever you listen to those as well. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley. We'll see you soon, Braves Country.